Hello, everybody. I'm here with special guest George Anderson. He's a professional musician and soundtrack composer. He's composed music for movies and various other media, and I just wanted to talk to him about his life and his work. So, if you want to tell us
Hello,
about it.
everyone. Um, as you said, my name's George Anderson. I'm from Long Island. I live upstate now for a couple of years. I have my own studio. I started playing music when I was 9 with playing drums, and my family had a piano in the house, so I taught myself piano from age 10 on up. And I didn't start recording until the late 70s, 1970s, when I was just about 20 years old, in my 20s, I guess. And it was just for my own sake. I was composing my own music, just doing with my own themes, using my own imagination, and eventually went to an attorney. This is how it all really began, to get copyrighted after I had a couple of hundred songs composed, and knew that getting a copyright is the right thing. It protects your work, of course. And it turned out that this attorney is a guy that Mark Levy, who was involved in film, and he asked me for a sample of my work after we did our copyright legal paperwork. And I sent him back then it was cassette. You recorded on a 4-track cassette machine, Fostex 280. I still have that machine. And when he heard my work, when he heard some of the songs I did, and he said, "George, this really sounds like soundtrack stuff, and I know people who might be able to use it."
All right, so what are some examples of work that you've done in films?
Yeah, the first example, it's interesting enough. Mark's a lawyer, of course, and is part of the New York Bar Association. And he was involved in a set of films called the Canons of Ethics. It's like a training film for lawyers who just get into the Bar Association in New York. And he said, I need some music for these films. And when I sent him the cassette tape as the example, I put a piece of music at the end. It was a 7-minute instrumental that I did for my wife, who was taking a postgraduate course. And she needed music for this event they were having in the class. And it ended up that Mark, the attorney, took this piece of music and they ended up editing it into all of these films for the Bar Association. And that was my first licensing agreement, and it was wonderful getting a check from attorneys. And that was the beginning.
Okay, so it was pretty simple. You just knew the right person.
Yeah. It was just a lucky thing that the attorney that I picked in New York State, all upstate New York, who does copyright, they were recommended me to the bar. I had gone to the bar and asked them, "Who do you have for copyright?" And they recommended Mark. Mark was the number one attorney for IBM for 18 years up here. Very knowledgeable guy. But it just turned out that he was also involved in film, an amateur filmmaker himself, and through him, after doing the Canons of Ethics contract, which for this music I did that he used in those films, he suggested me to other filmmakers that he knew and other organizations, and then it just took off from there.
Yeah, that's basically how it works. You get the right person, and then they can introduce you to others. So did you have any specific inspiration or someone or something that got you started in the first place?
Yeah, I just always loved music. I've been listening to music since I'm little. My mom always listened to records, country music. I spent my first couple of years in Oklahoma, so my mom listened to Hank Williams and that kind of stuff, which I always liked. It was always catchy 2-minute songs. And I had 2 older sisters, which had a big influence on me because their music was 5 and 6 years ahead of what I would have listened to normally. So like when Elvis came on the scene and Buddy Holly, that rock and roll stuff, that really influenced me. I was a young kid then. I was only 5 and 6 years old, but I was listening to it all. And by 9, I had a drum set, a professional drum set, and started playing to those kind of records. And by junior high school, by 12 and 13, I had a little band together with a fella from Texas who played guitar, who moved into Long Island, and we would play all those early rock and roll numbers. And then but I kind of veered away from the drums because I couldn't. I always thought in melody, and then, if you know about drums, melody is very difficult. And that's when I started teaching myself piano on my mom's upright piano. And then right away, the time I was a young teenager, I was already starting to write songs and figuring out melodies and how to put it together.
All right. So, what was the most difficult part about your journey in becoming a professional musician, if there was one?
Yeah, it's staying focused. For one thing, you have to stay very focused. Before I got into the profession of soundtrack composing, which is deadlines and contracts, and you have business, and there's a whole business side to that. Um, there's a focus in the music itself, and for me, I wanted all my songs to sound different, and the way to do that is to play in different styles. I play keyboards, I play percussion, I play different guitars and different styles, and to keep changing, you have to change yourself. You can't. You have to change tunings of guitars, and you have to play different styles. For instance, regular pick style, which a lot of guitar players play, but also finger style, and also slide style. They're all different. And then once you add in different tunings to guitars, you've really expanded your world. And that was a focus to keep, for me, was to keep changing and to keep evolving.
All right. What would be your personal little word of advice to someone who wants to become a professional musician or composer?
Be stubborn, work very hard, and practice and play every day. I tell people, I've taught guitar lessons, I've spoken to other groups and music about soundtrack composing, and it's one of the things you do is to constantly play and also experiment. That's the biggest thing I can suggest, is don't be afraid to experiment. Try different styles of playing, try different tunings. Don't be afraid to try a different instrument. You may not be great at it, but if you're going to do soundtrack work, you're going to need a lot of different sounds. Film requires all kinds of sounds. Here's an example from a lot of songs that I've written for soundtrack. They could be anywhere from 1 to a 4-track song, maybe 1 or 2 tracks vocal and the rest instrumental, all the way up to 20 tracks where I've had to do an orchestra piece just for a 30-second piece of film, which was an incredible amount of work.
Yeah, I'm sure. All right. What was one of your greatest moments, like when you reached a goal, or just something really great happened in your
in the music
experience?
World? Yeah. One of the things that sticks out in my mind, and I'll always remember it. It was the first time I had a full feature film, which is usually a film that runs 90 minutes or longer. And I had to do 80 separate tracks for the film. It was a lot of work. I wrote a lot of music, and took a lot of recording, and you can it's called post-production work. And of course, I was invited to the premiere, which happened to be on Long Island, at a theater in Long Island. And that was just a very exciting thing to see the film up on the marquee, and then to be introduced, and there was press there, when people want to talk to the soundtrack guy, and then when they saw the film after, there was a lot more interviews, and to finally hear my music come out of a big screen was extremely exciting.
Yeah, not everyone has the honor of getting any awards and stuff, but have you had any?
I haven't had personal rewards other than my own satisfaction, making money at it. I did do a film that actually got a runner-up in the Motion Picture Academy. I had nothing really to do with it. I didn't find out until a year later when I went to see one of the producers, and they had a plaque on the wall stating that. And I was like, well, you could have told me, that we really did well with this film. But and that was a great satisfaction to think that, the West Coast are looking at some of this stuff and liking it. So that, to me, was a highlight as well.
Okay. Do you have any future dreams or goals for you in the industry?
Just to keep writing, which I do constantly. I always have songs. I have 20 or 30 songs now that I haven't put music yet to, and I also have tunes that I haven't put lyrics to. I don't do that all the time. Sometimes music is just the instrumentals. Sometimes I leave lyrics are really poems to me, and I have a book of poems, and I have short stories. I like to write as well. I've been published. I've written an article that was published in the West Coast. It was titled Soundtrack Composing for the Independent Film. And strangely enough, a few years ago, my attorney contacted me and said, George, I was sitting in an airport and something strange happened. And I was like, what happened, Mark? And he said, I picked up a magazine. He was in England at the time, at an airport. and there was a magazine, and it had an article, a film magazine published in England, and it was my article, which I had no idea that they were going to publish this or was even asked about. But they actually took the article from 2003, word for word, and republished it in a British magazine. The reason we didn't do anything legally was because they left all my contact information that I included at the end of the article. So for me, it was free advertising.
So, not everyone, once they get into a position like yours, whether it's musician or actor or anything, where you're not like this big, super famous person, but, you've got a job and you make money and everything. If you had the opportunity to go further, would you?
It depends. What's going on in Hollywood in these last 10 years, pretty much in the big film industry, is that they're sending their post-production work, which is the music soundtrack, it's the voiceover. Almost all the movies now are voiced over. They don't record, direct anymore like they used to. Excuse me. It's all being sent up to Canada, up to British Columbia. And I had gone up there a few years ago. I had visited, and I was in the two largest studios in Canada, which was really interesting. And I watched some post-production work they were doing. It was a film, I don't remember, but it was with Cameron Diaz. And they had a 40-foot screen and a 30-foot mixing table in front of the screen. And they were adding in music and her voice. But they're doing most of Hollywood's post-production work. So to get involved now, if you want to do anything in the big business with the big budget films, you really go through Canada. It's an interesting process how you have to do this. So of course I talked to them and I left them a bunch of my work, and who knows what will come out of that. But my main objective at this point in life is just to keep writing music and writing lyrics, and I love working in the studio more than anything else. I recently in the last years have been playing more live gigs, but for me the most interesting and creative part is being in my own studio and putting this all together, because you're never quite sure how it's going to come out or what I might add to it. It's all up to me, which is the best part. There really are no rules.
All right, I don't have any more questions, so if there's anything else you want to add.
We've covered a lot. Let's see. What I can say to young people especially is be brave. If I didn't take chances, I wouldn't have been able to do what I did. I was a high school teacher on Long Island, and I didn't teach music. But the music, this situation came up when I met this attorney, like I explained before, and it presented itself into a whole career. And I left teaching, a great 10-year teaching job on Long Island, to go into it, and I have absolutely no regrets. It worked out. So far I've done 17 films. And numerous other things. I've done music for a radio show in Cleveland. I've composed lots of demos for sitcoms, and you never know what's going to come out of that. You just do it. It's up to the producers. It's out of my hands. I'm only the music guy. So it's an interesting process. You never know where it's going to go, but just keep playing, keep recording. Is that?
I ran out of that.
Yeah, that's okay. I think we covered a lot.